Hey everyone, it's your host Marcus Norman of the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. Today, the man I'm bringing to the stage here, I couldn't be more enthusiastic about. This man is a man amongst men. This man is a superhero. The modern day, people know him as the Moose, right? We got the GOAT, now we got the Moose. This man is incredible. You won't want to miss 1 second of who I'm bringing to the stage here today. So stay tuned, stay with us. You won't want to miss 1 second. Here we go. Hey everyone, it's Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. I'm your host, your favorite gentleman coming to the stage. Who I have here, Mr. Dai Manuel. This man is a rock star, super dad. This man has been dating his wife. He's very intentional on dating his wife for over 21 years, and they couldn't be more in love. He has his platform. This lead by example way of living is contagious personality, and who he is to set out on a mission to positively impact 1 million role models around the globe. This man is unstoppable. He's also an award-winning digital thought leader, an author, distinguished Toastmaster, and keynote speaker who's sought after throughout the globe. I have a special treat that this TED Talk, his most recent TED Talk, you have to tune in. I have a short clip for you guys. You guys check him out. This is a culmination of what manhood is all about. Enjoy. Here we go.
10 years ago, I was fun guy Dai. A pretty all right guy, but underneath that 33-year-old exterior, he was afraid. But all that changed on January 1st, 2010. As far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a great man. On January 1st, 2010, I realized that sometimes you just have to let go of the idea of who you believe you are to start living as the person you want to be. We're not humans being emotional. We're emotional human beings, which begs the question, why did I choose to numb, to hide, to seek an escape from so many of the emotions that make up a part of my human experience? We realize we're not so alone. By embracing vulnerability, men find more happiness and fulfillment in life, and we've all found more than two friends to share the highs and lows with along the way. I've come to realize that vulnerability isn't just a woman thing. Vulnerability isn't just a man thing. Vulnerability is a human thing.
Oh my gosh. Without further ado, I can't hold this man back any further. That is just a culmination of what we're about to talk about today, but the incredible Mr. Dai Manuel.
Marcus, I gotta say you said you got a treat. That was a treat. I was like, wow, that's like the abbreviated version. It was awesome. I loved it, and thank you for that. That was fun. It was like a little blast down memory lane because that was just over a year ago, actually, a couple months ago. So yeah, man, this is awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. Thank you, sir. Even though it's been over a year ago, it's still necessary. It's still something that we need to hear, something we still need to discuss because it's a taboo. It's still taboo amongst men, right? And we need to do better. And you are leading the charge amongst men. And sir, I wanted to ask a question. What inspired you? What inspired you down the path you're on right now to inspire and to create global leaders across the globe?
Well, let's just jump to the jugular there, right? Just get right at it. Well, like it's a culmination, like all of us. I reference that idea of like the human experience, and that's not a novel concept. It's something that we're all pretty familiar with. But when you think about it, what is the human experience? Well, we're born into this planet, right? Into a life, and with that life, we have so many opportunities presenting itself to us as we just live. We experience things. We meet people, we have conversations, we experience lots of highs and our fair share of lows. And yet, the beautiful thing is every single one of us, every human being on this planet, in our DNA, we have something called resiliency. And that's in every one of us. And learning that and actually accepting that that's a truth. And what I mean by a truth is that we are people that are capable of overcoming hard stuff, painful stuff, suffering, if you will. And yet we can come out the other side and we can grow, we can learn, we can adapt, we can evolve. And as a result of that, if you go back into sort of some of the teachings of Maslow, and especially like his hierarchy of needs, we start to think that the epitome and really the acme of this mountain that represents our life is this idea of self-realization, of this idea of figuring out, why the heck am I here? What is my purpose in life? And that is something that every single one of us are looking for. But we can't just invent it. We can't just make it up overnight. It is something that we discover just by living our life. And when we realize this and we start getting out of our own way a little bit, we start to realize that, wow, we can have a lot of fun while discovering this about ourselves and about those that we love and those that make up this beautiful world of ours. And so to answer your questions, I had to give you some context there, because everything that I've experienced up to these 45 years I've been on this planet have obviously brought me to certain beliefs and certain understanding of myself. And I'm not here to say I've got it figured out yet, but I like to think I've learned a couple things along the way, and a couple of them was that there's some cliches and stereotypes that are out there, especially in North America. And in other places around the world, I've also witnessed it. But these stereotypes and cliches around men and what it means to be a man is very confusing for a lot of us. And I'm one of those people that was very confused by that and found that my life was not, well, let's just say the colors weren't as bright, the foods weren't as tasty, and some of my experiences with other people weren't what they could have been, because I was limiting myself based on things that were role model to me earlier on in life. So with that, I'll leave it at that. And it was out of a need and to be honestly, a necessity of mine just over 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago now, that I had to make some changes, because I wasn't willing to go the rest of my life dealing with the same challenges, the same problems, same limitations that had been limiting me up to that point at 32 years of age. And I wanted to make some changes. And that's sort of where the TEDx talk picks up and shares a little bit of that story and some of that journey that I embarked on 12 years ago. And I'm still on it today. And I'm just trying to help people get out of their own way so they can experience more joy, happiness, and fulfillment in the lives that they're living. And that's it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Men go through so many different things. We deal with so many different obstacles and challenges day in and day out. It seems never ending. What's the biggest challenge you've overcome in your life? Are you that faithful day, January 1st? Are you able to share any of that? Some of that?
Sure.
Spill some tea on that?
Yeah, why not? Well, here's the tea. Okay. Like earlier on, especially around, I'd say 16, 17, 18 years old, I was dealing with a lot of social anxiety. And as a result of some of that social anxiety that I had sort of developed and some depression and some other mental health challenges. And it was largely due to the fact that I'd spent from the age 9 to 14 in a state of unhealth. And when I say unhealth, I was morbidly obese. I was very, very overweight as a teenager. And, and I'm not here to rehash the past. Okay. I'm not here to talk about where my mental health was during that period, but I'll just tell you, it wasn't in a good place. And at age 15, I finally took it upon myself that I was the only person that could actually make the changes that I wanted to make. Rather than looking for answers outside of myself, I came to a realization, I just got to start doing things different than I was doing it. And I started down that path. And meanwhile, as I'm starting down this path of trying to regain my health and my well-being and understand how does one even go about doing that, I also was trying to figure out a way of getting past some of my limiting beliefs, in particular around just being around people and feeling judged. And you know what? It was tough. We can all relate to this because I know we've all dealt with this at some point in our lives. But then I discovered something called alcohol We've all probably familiar with alcohol. And I realized if I had a couple drinks, wow, a lot of these fears or these concerns, these limiting beliefs, they just weren't prominent anymore. They sort of went to the back of the room, if you know what I mean. And it allowed me to then sort of assume a different personality and act as if I was somebody different. And I started to realize that certain people like to get around that person. And so it started to make me feel good about myself. It started to make me feel validated, appreciated, wanted. And wanted is the real one. And, that's the key word. And that set in motion a path in my 20s and my early 30s that was really challenging, because as much as I was all geared around helping people and supporting them with their health and life, especially lifestyles and well-being, I myself was very good at supporting them. But then on the flip side, I felt kind of like an imposter, because I was living this other life where I would go out, I would drink too much, I would often do things that I was very regretful of. And this was a pattern that repeated itself. And you can imagine, I met my wife, we had kids, and I honestly thought that when I had my kids, that pattern would change in me. And it did for a period. But then it crept back into normalcy again, where my regular everyday was just drinking alcohol to deal with my stress, my depression, my overwhelm. And I warranted it. I was like, I provide for my family, I help everybody else, so this is my way of helping myself. I deserve this. And any way to justify it. And I think I'm not here to be a doom speaker, but I'll tell you, it's a slippery slope, because it's only a matter of time to maintain a lifestyle like that. I have yet to meet anybody that's like, oh yeah, I've lived like that my entire life. Well, I have yet to meet anybody like that. So as a result, I realized, in 2010, my wife asked me a question. And this is over a conversation of us determining how we were going to co-parent our kids and go our separate directions. So for everybody out there, yes, we were contemplating divorce and separation and divorce and going our separate ways after being together for 10 years and having 2 kids under the age of 6. And family is one of my values. And so this was very, very scary, a very scary moment. And, between our tears and it wasn't just tears, it was me also just being very, very afraid. And of that, I was eventually going to lose everything. Here it was at this moment. And the only person I could blame for that was me. And my wife asked me a question. And this is the question, Marcus, and I'm going to leave it at this so we can continue on our conversation. I'm feeling like I'm sort of just preaching here, but I don't mean to be like that. But I want to let everybody know this is a question that all of you can take note of, because I believe that if you put this question into your toolbox, it will become a very clarifying question, but more importantly, a guiding question to help point us in the right direction, especially when it comes to our own internal values and navigation system. My wife, she looks at me. She says, Dai, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? And Marcus, I'll tell you right then and there, at that moment when she asked that question, I realized I had nothing to say that could possibly defend myself for the way I was living my life and the actions I was demonstrating to my kids, my family, my friends, my communities. And it was right then in that moment I realized, some changes got to happen again. Just like when I was 15, morbidly obese, looking at myself in the mirror, contemplating suicide, because I thought that would be easier than trying to get healthy. Here I was again, but I didn't have a mirror I was looking at. Instead, I was looking at my reflection in my wife's eyes and realizing that, my goodness, change has to happen. I need to make some changes. And I made a commitment to go 1 year without drinking. Funny enough, after 1 year, it's turned into a lifestyle. And, 13 years later, I still haven't had a drink. And it's not that I don't think I could have one. It's just that I've had so much amazing things happen as a result of making a change of moving away from alcohol. I'm like, what if I just keep going this way? What's possible? And so that's sort of it. That was one of the most challenging and yet enlightening experiences I've ever had to date, Marcus. So appreciate you for that little prod to go down memory lane. And I don't know, do you have anything that relates to that, Marcus? Have you had a similar experience yourself?
First off, I want to say thank you, brother. Thank you for giving. Sir, yes. So for me, it's been a journey. It's been a having a divorce under my belt, when that D word, that infamous D word, when it comes up, it still gives you chills. It still sends a cold shock down your spine. And um, fortunately, that word came up in my marriage, and I fought. I fought like crazy. I fought counseling, therapy, church, God, Buddha, whoever would answer. I was just searching for that answer, and finally, my counselor, she just said to me, my therapist, she just said to me, "She's like, Marcus, you need to push forward with it." After fighting, but I look back, and we can't, like you said, we can't live in regret. We can't just sit there and just continue to live in the past. You got to move forward. And one of the things that I was able to come to the realization of is I can't control anyone else. We can't control our surroundings, but we can control us. And so I made sure that I realized, hey, this is my control. This is my realm of control. This is my realm of influence. And to stay here and to make sure that moving forward, that it's going to be a shining light. It's going to be powerful. And it's going to be better than my past. So you're so right. So right. So thank you for asking the hard question. Sorry to put you on the spot there, brother.
Not at all. I love it. You know what? It's good. And I just know that my story's not unique. I know of other men that have similar experiences, and women, and just human beings, right? And I think that's the interesting thing, is that sometimes we forget that we're not as unique as we may think we are. And what I mean by this, and sorry, this is not to say that we're not all our own unicorns, okay? We are all 100% unique and individual. But yet some of the experiences that we have, or at least the situations that we put ourselves in, other people have had similar experiences. But here's the thing. Until we open up with each other and share about some of these experiences or challenges or struggles, or even the good stuff that's going on in our lives, if we're not opening up about those with one another, how do we know? Like, how do we know? It's a case in point, at my men's groups, I remember one meeting in particular, there was a young gentleman, and it was his first time ever coming to a men's group, and he was like 19, maybe 20 at the earliest. And meanwhile, around this table, we had just a couple dozen guys sitting around a big table. And we meet Monday nights for dinner and conversation. And, here's this young guy, first time coming in, seeing all these different men sitting around a table. Like, he looked like a deer in headlights, right? He's just like, whoa, what is this? Where am I right now? Am I in the right place? Should I be here? Can I turn around and leave? But where we're situated, it's like when you walk in there, there's no other way out except going out the way you came in. So he's like, I'm in. I guess I'm here. And he is trapped, right? And so he sat down, and he sat across from the gentleman that was in his early 70s. So just to give this some context here, we had from 20 up to early 70s and everything in between. And we also had 9 different countries represented at that table. So think about that from a cultural standpoint too. But we were all men, all human beings, all coming together to literally share conversation and see what happens. And this young guy, I could tell he was really sheepish, quite shy, didn't know how to handle the situation, right? Like, he's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know why I'm here. Like, and what's going to happen here, right? Like, you can just see it in his face.
To go down.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Like, so here he is sitting there, and he's sitting across from the guy in his early 70s. And we set up the meeting, and we lay down a couple little rules or guidelines, suggestions to make sure we maintain the integrity and privacy and of the group, and really create a safe space for guys to open up if they want to. Again, It's not required, but just if they want to. And we always like to open up with the question, what's alive and real for you right now? It's a great question. Even like if you're reconnecting with a friend, you want to have a deeper conversation. It's like, hey man, what's alive and real for you right now? Like, what are you working through? What's going on for you? Like, it's a great way to take a temperature check on the now. And we put that question out to the group, and it's like, does anybody want to start us off? Well, the guy in his 70s started us off. And he started to share a story that was super personal, Marcus, like really personal. It was a challenge that he's been working through most of his life. And he finally got to a place where he felt like, now in my early 70s, I really feel like I've moved past this, and out of integrity of the group, I don't want to share what he was talking about, but I can give you sort of some general context. Anyways, he shares this very deep It's a deep share. You know, like when people share like a little part of their heart, their soul, and they open up a little bit, but they say it in a way that allows us all to learn from their experience.
Right.
And here's this thing. Across from him, 19, 20-year-old guy, first time in a men's group, probably his first time ever being around a group where all of a sudden men start opening up about things that are really real for them. And he's just taking it all in. But after the older guy shared, and then we said, okay, who would like to go next? You know who put up his hand? That young guy. And he proceeded to share something extremely real for him right now, something that he'd been harboring for years and trying to work through on his own. And he opened up publicly about this struggle that he'd been working through. After the meeting, Nick and I had an opportunity. Nick is the gentleman that co-founded Mentorship Mondays with me and co-facilitates it. And he literally, we approached the young guy and just said, hey, we're so happy you came. Feel free to come back anytime you want. How was the experience for you? And he says, you know what? When I came in here, I didn't know why I was here, but I'm leaving here feeling a lot better than I was when I came. And I feel amazing for finally getting some stuff off my chest that I haven't been able to get off my chest before. And so what happened, Marcus, was one person, by going and being a little bit vulnerable, not for awe, not to say, hey, look at me. This is me being vulnerable. I'm going to share something very private. Look at me. You know, it's not an ego thing. It's a heart thing, right? And here we are sharing openly about something. It gives others permission to do the same because it builds trust, connection, and understanding. And that's the power of vulnerability. You know, it's a skill any of us can develop. But I think a lot of us are so intimidated by the prospect and fear of judgment and ridicule and just not being taken seriously or being taken for granted that we just shield ourselves from those experiences and from deeper connection. And that's my mission, man. I want to help open people up to this. You know, there's a safer way of doing this and there's a healthier way of doing it. And man, does life get way better when you start to practice this, you know? But anyways, that was a little side note. I thought it would be a relevant story to share right now.
It is. Dai Manuel, y'all. Vulnerability. I want to touch on vulnerability and why that is not just a woman thing. Why men are not emotionally connecting. But first, I want to talk about the good. Sir, you have an incredible family. But you teach this. You coach this. You mentor to this. You mentored men on this concept, and you say it all the time. You're still dating your wife of 21 years. What does that mean, still dating? Because your guys are married. What do you mean dating still for 21 years?
Well, language is a big deal, right? Like just not only the way we say it, but the way we think it, and especially the way we live it. And when you think about certain language, especially the language that we use to talk to ourselves, and I mean, that's the voice that's in our head when nobody else is around, that we hear chatter going on. And, you know, as the Zen Buddhists would say, it often feels like monkey mind. You know, it feels like we got a couple of loose monkeys just running around in our head, and we got all these different thoughts and ideas and concepts and feelings and emotions, and just, it's chaos. Well, even when the chaos quietens down, there's still usually a voice there, and it's our own. And often the language that we use to speak to ourselves is not always very positive. At least I mean, I'll admit it. Like I myself, especially, you know, when I was morbidly obese as a teenager, or when I was struggling my most with alcohol and drug use, you know, like those voices in my head were really mean, not very supportive at all. And so we have to realize that language is very critical, but especially how we program ourselves and what kind of language we use when we think to ourselves about who we are. Who am I? What do I care about? What's important? What's my purpose with life? What makes me feel fulfilled or connected with people? And thinking about the language. And so around this whole idea, obviously my marriage with my wife is my most important relationship out of all my relationships, besides my relationship with self, of course. You know, because if I can't show up as my best version for her, I probably can't show up as my best version for myself, you know, and vice versa. And so with my wife, this idea of dating, because everybody out there, think about it. When you're dating somebody, how do you show up? What does that word, what kind of intention does it create for the action that follows? And I know all of you have an answer right now. Marcus, I'm sure you're thinking of something right now, but think about it. What does dating mean to you? When you use the word dating, what does that imply? Well, usually implies that there's this getting to know each other. There's this excitement. There's this idea of purposely trying to put our best foot forward for that significant person that we're now wanting to potentially create a life together with. And yet it all starts from that dating period, that courting period, that get to know each other period. But why should that ever end? Because it shouldn't. We're always learning something new. Every day for every minute, if I was with my wife, I still wouldn't know everything about her. And so here's a fun way of sort of setting some intentions towards our relationship, so we're forever dating. We have to be married, but we're dating. More importantly, we're still discovering, we're still having fun, we're still taking time to get to know each other. And so that's what I meant by that, this idea of dating my wife, dating my partner. And so Marcus, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? When it comes to language, especially, what are your thoughts?
No, great topic, and I and here's a picture of them madly in love, y'all. I had to show it. I've fallen in love with this couple. They're one of my favorite couples now. But this is them just enthralled with each other. Dating your wife. I wholeheartedly 1000% agree with you, right? You should never stop falling in love. You should never stop courting your wife. You should never remember how you started. Why remember the reason you started. Remember those commitments, remember those vows, remember the reason why you chose to go through life together. We oftentimes, and what you focus on, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, what you focus on becomes the center of your world. And if you're not focusing, COVID-19 showed us what we were truly focusing on. Some people focus on their job. Men, especially men, identify themselves, who they are by the amount of money they make and their career. And that is not true. I'm a military veteran. And one of the things I had to overcome when I got out the military is everyone asks, what'd you do? What are you doing? Well, who are you? That's what I care about. Who are you when the lights are off? Who are you when you leave this place or leave this space? Who are you? And what do you intend to do? That's the more important question. Not what do you do? But most men identify by what they do. They almost put their self-worth into it. And you focused on, remember, I'm a family man. We led with that. I'm a family man. I love my wife. I love my kids. And that's the center of my world. And self, my health, my fitness, me, right? It's not selfish. It's not wrong to put you. What did they tell you when you get on an airplane? Fix your mask first before you help others. You can't pour from an empty cup. So remember why you started. Date your wife after the wedding, after the anniversary. Love on her continuously. It never ends. And you'll find that that's what stays. Kids, they'll grow up, they'll leave you. The house, the cars, the job, they'll fire you. Who do you wake up next to? That's important. That's important.
Well, it's I love how you put that too, because it's interesting when you bring up the term regret. I mean, it's a really weird emotion that's brought up when we regret something, like we feel remiss, we feel sad, we feel loss, because it feels like something that we can never get again, or maybe we never had the opportunity to get to begin with. And knowing that there's these feeling of regret that can be created, you start to think about this, and Brene Brown did some amazing, did a great TED talk, but she wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying, and here's her having these conversations with people at end of life, asking them, hey, is there anything that you regret not doing with your life? And almost 100% of the people that she asked that question to had one of 5, if not all 5 of the same regrets. And we can't argue this. This is like, these are people at end of life saying, this is the stuff I really wish I'd focused or put my time and energy into, made it a priority. One of which was like, I wish I'd, chose to live the life I wanted to live, not the life that others expected of me. Like, how many of us have felt that, right? Like, I went to university originally because I wanted my dad to be proud of me. Like that was it. I had no interest in what I was studying, which reflected in the grades after the first year, but my motivation for going was really just from my dad, I was doing it to hopefully make him happy and proud. And it wasn't until I opened up with him and, after that first year and said, I really don't want to do this and I don't like it. And I was like, well, why'd you do it to begin with? I was like, well, I thought you wanted me to. He goes, no, I don't want you. I just want you to be happy. I'm like, oh man, I wish we had this conversation a year ago. Dad, I would have saved you a bunch of money. But like that's just one example. One of the other regrets is I wish, what was it? I wish I'd kept in touch, with people that matter, and in particular, like friends, family. People do lose connection. They don't prioritize maintaining relationships. One of the ones is I wish I'd allowed myself to be happier. I mean, that implies happiness is a choice, and yet we can choose to be happy or not. And so it's interesting when you start to see these regrets, you can't argue with it, and you start to think, if I'm at end of life, I'm lying in bed, and I know it's my final days, who do I want around me? I'll tell you, my boss, he's not going to be there. He's not going to be there. Like he won't be, like the guy won't be there. Like there's certain people that will not be there. And to be honest, do I want him there? No. But why? Why yet we might dedicate 30, 40 of our best years to working a career and identifying that as our identity, and yet when we come out of that period and we have that maybe next 20, 30, 40 years after we retire, we can't rely on that anymore. Yet so many of us men try to still maintain that ego play, right? That because that's all we've ever had. And I think that's the real issue, is that if we only are our work, we don't leave any space for us to actually be the person that we were meant to be. Because we're not meant to just be work. We're so much more than that. And anyways, I start to digress and bounce all over these tangents, but I love where you're going with the regret piece and what you shared there, Marcus. And I think it's just so important for everybody to recognize what is something that I will never regret. I'll never regret showing up to my daughter's play, one of her new plays that she's acting in, or a film debut. I will never miss that. Will I miss having a Sunday fun day with my kids at the park and my family at the park? No. Never. Like, will I feel remiss or regretful, for maybe canceling out on a professional appointment to make that one-off appointment with my kids, and I've done this before, but I will always tell those people, like, hey, listen, family is one of my core values. I have a special opportunity with my daughter. This is a one-off. It might not happen again. I'd like to do this. Would you be okay if we switch appointments? I've never had anybody tell me no, ever. Right. You know why? Because we're all humans experiencing the same thing. And we all have certain similar values. It's just we don't always prioritize the values. That's where we run into problems, So anyways, I digress.
We have one quick commercial break. We got to pay some bills, y'all. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Support for Gentleman Style Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers you precision engineering tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off free worldwide shipping with the code GENTSTYLE at manscaped.com.
Good day, podcast listeners. This is your boy, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. I wanted to let you guys know that we will be rolling out a new feature and adding a join sponsor button next to the subscriber button here at the bottom of your screen. Once you click the button, it will display 3 membership levels. Gentleman Gentry, which is our entry level. Duke Duchess, which is our season level. And the Emperor and Empress, which is our most sophisticated level, which you will receive unique perks and benefits at each differing level and gain access to our community tab. We will also be sharing polls, upcoming events, and interviews, as well as receive feedback from our sponsors directly. Your support helps me find new and exciting guests to bring to the stage live. Well, in order to get the higher end speakers, it requires, some, you guessed it, money. So thank you for tuning in to my channel. And if becoming a sponsor sounds good to you, then select the join button below and choose your desired sponsor level. Let's continue to grow and serve the future of generations of men and women to come. Love you guys. Bye. We are back to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. We have the incredible Mr. Dai Manuel, and he is spilling the tea. Man of all men. This man is sharing nuggets, y'all. If you missed it, scroll back, go back, and check him out. He is an incredible TEDx speaker, phenomenal fitness coach. He's speaking to me because I used to be obese as well. And I have trimmed down, but I'm getting back to it. Gotta get back to the fitness, the health. Health is wealth. But if you missed any of what this man is talking about, check him out. You can find us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Audible, Google Play, YouTube, and Facebook business page, wherever you get your podcast, and iHeartRadio. So, Mr. Manuel, sir, what is it? You mentioned this earlier. I want to touch on this because it's so important for men to gather. It's so important for men. One of your famous topics is one of the things you always talk about: iron sharpens iron, right? I love that. I love that inspiration, and it's so true. What is it about your mentorship Mondays? What's the significance of that, and how's it been going? How's that been going for you? Because it's so important for us to gather. I really believe that.
Well, thanks. You know, Marcus, you're right. Gathering is important. I mean, the term tribe means something. It does. Community means something. And I think if we actually take a moment to think, well, what does those terms mean to me? Like, what does community mean to me? How has it supported me in my life? How have I been able to support community in my life? Because again, at the end of the day, you know, relationships are really the only thing that matters. You know, and not just relationship with others and our communities, but also ourselves, you know, that relationship to self. But yet, where do we get to go and practice this stuff or have conversations or to just talk about the human experience without any fear of judgment or ridicule or of us saying something that somebody might in turn use against us? Because I think as men, we're always on guard, aren't we? We're concerned that if we say something to the wrong person, that might be used against us, or somebody might take advantage of the situation. And as such, we do limit how much we share, how much we open up about. And listen, I'm not here to say you have to air everything. You have to be like, open your trench coat and say, this is my life. Because not everybody is deserving of your vulnerability. It's typically earned, and it's earned through trust. But if you think about how friendships start and how you became best friends with your best friend, it's not only shared experiences, but it often starts with shared passions. But how did you figure out what you were both passionate about or interested about or motivated about? You probably had conversation where you started to share snippets or bits about your past, about your thoughts, your feelings, and really the things that have made you who you are. So as it was such, like if we're all in agreement that this is something that's important, so if we all agree, so all the men that are listening right now and women, you've already got this figured out. So we're trying to catch up to you, okay? So I'm speaking to the men right now, men specifically. If we recognize that community is important, friendships are important, and we want more connection, right? Understanding, I think we'll also understand that, well, where do we find it? And I know this is where I got to. I was like, I really feel that I want some more significant relationships with men in my life because I found that I didn't have very, very deep connection with other men. There's a couple, but as I started traveling with my family around the world, I was finding that, you know, maintaining some of those connections was challenging, especially with different time zones. And so when we found ourselves living in Bali, I was like under the impression that if I want to meet some great men, I can go around and try to meet people, or why don't I just host something or start a weekly gathering, a get-together, where I invite men that are open to connecting with other men, but opening up about things that are real, things that are on our minds and on our hearts. But in a safe, contained environment where we don't have to be concerned that anybody will take what we're sharing about there and spread it anywhere else. And there's not a lot of these containers out there. But, and this is the best thing, Marcus, and for those that are listening, there's more and more men's groups popping up all over the place. This is becoming a more readily available offer for us, and often it doesn't cost anything. I mean, our groups are free, but I've even seen some other groups that are very low cost. It's just nominal fees to either to get a room or to cover some of the technical fees to host this type of stuff, but it's so little relative to the value that you gain. And so I want to invite people, look for a community where you can go and start connecting with other men that are on a similar wavelength, that maybe want to experience more out of life, but they've recognized they need deeper connection with other men to get there. And then just try it. Okay, just try it. That is my only invitation to any man listening to this right now. Just go try it. If you've never been to a men's group, try it. All right, because I know you'll have plenty to gain. And there's very little concern. At the very least, you can say you tried it. Maybe it wasn't your cup of tea, as they say, but try another one. Find a community to belong to, not join. And this is where I'll leave this, Marcus. If you find a community that you feel like I belong here, life-changing. But if you're just saying, oh, I joined this community, very different. Different intention, different relationship. And if it's something that you just joined, trust me, if something else comes up, like an opportunity to go play, pick up sports with a friend or friends, and it's on that night where that commitment was made, it's just a community I joined. You may figure out a way to break that commitment because it's not as important to you. But if it's a place that you belong, I know you'll make it a priority to show up, because it's not only showing up for you, but you're showing up for the others that are also attending. That is powerful, and it's a great place to find oneself, especially when you get a community like that around you, supporting you and helping you. And also, in turn, you able to help them, because that is the human experience, right? We don't want to do this thing by ourselves. I mean, we get pretty darn boring. We want to have fun with one another. We want to experience life with one another, because we are social beings as well. So anyways, that's sort of I'll get off the soapbox for a second about men's groups, and I'll turn it back to you, Marcus.
Love it, love it, love it. We have a question from our VIP sponsor, Miss Nikki Brown. She asked a question. And I'm going to leave this. I'm going to get off stage because you got this, Mr. Man. She asked, how do we as women show we're at peace and we are a safe place for our significant other to be vulnerable?
Nikki, that is a great question. A really powerful question, actually. And, I don't think there's any one easy way to answer this, but because relationships are very dynamic. There's lots of moving parts. There's obviously lots of history to every relationship. It's not like it just started last night. Well, I mean, maybe it did, but I'm thinking based on the significance of what you're saying here, specifically, significant other, that would imply that there's probably history there. As there's history there, I find that broaching these types of conversations for men that were like I was 13 years ago, it usually comes out, or these conversations sometimes happen, if they ever happen, out of a place of fear of something bad or worse is going to happen if they don't deal with it now. And what I mean by this is I had to get to a place where all of a sudden my wife was discussing with me the idea of us separating. And it was finally at that place where I realized, my goodness, I have to just tell her how I'm actually feeling and what I've been experiencing, so she truly understands why this has been so hard for me to change, to stop drinking. And when I opened up with her and realized this, we had a private space, it was quiet, we didn't have any other distractions or any other commitments that evening. So we could focus one another and have a conversation. And she created a container for me. What I mean by that is, like, she let me know that she wasn't going to judge me. There was no judgment. It was simply wanting to understand and connect. But more importantly, she also wanted to support me. No matter what direction we went, she wanted to support and help, because we have love for one another. Plus, we have kids together, so there was, as you said, significant other. Absolutely. So creating a safe space is a great place to begin. But also setting some very simple ground rules, which would be like asking a question and then let the person speak and don't speak until they're done. And even when they look like they're done, say, is there anything else? Anything else on that? And thank them, acknowledge them, because this lets them know that you hear them. I can tell you as a man, sometimes when I've shared vulnerably and I haven't had that acknowledged back to me that I've been heard or understood or acknowledged, it made me feel like I was dismissed. And when I felt dismissed, it made me close down. And I wouldn't want to open up with that individual again. Or it would take a lot of work for me to get to a place where I could open up comfortably again. So we have to be fully attentive and present for that individual to be ready to have either the conversation or to at least be present for them to open up. There's other ways around this, and I would recommend checking out Brene Brown. She has some great resources around vulnerability, but also on ways to create safe containers. Now, please recognize she speaks a lot about vulnerability in the professional space, but she also has some amazing content that's relevant, personally, professionally, and everything in between. So just maybe sift through some of the content, some of our podcast conversations or YouTube videos, and I think it will give you a little bit more understanding on how to do this in a safe, contained way. But just the fact that you're willing to do this for your significant other is huge. I think it's absolutely huge, and I know it will be okay because you're leading with your heart, not with your head, okay? Just go with feeling, it's all about the feels. It's all about the feels. And so I know you got this, Nikki, and feel free. If you have any other questions, you can reach out anytime.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Great question. Thank you. Love it when our VIP sponsors chime in, but anyone can chime in if you guys have questions. My question, back to me, because I got questions. Sir,
Sure.
You've said this throughout the show, and it's so important because it's a concept that I think it revolves around having emotional intelligence. But you coached it as well, which is vulnerability, right? Why should men focus on working on being more vulnerable? Because to some men, some circles, that's a feminine quality. That's a feminine. Women get to talk about their emotions. They get to talk about their feels and what feels good. Men, we don't do that, right? I'm gonna go out there. I don't have time to hug this deer. I gotta kill it, drag it home, and bring it back to feed my family. Why should men rethink this?
I think that's a really good question, Marcus. I think it's really just the relationship with the term, right? Because again, getting back to sort of what we talked about at the beginning of the show was, this idea of words and language and what it means to us. And I think if we have a negative connotation or a negative relationship with the term vulnerability, it's now to do some introspection or reflection of asking ourselves, why do I feel so negative or anti this term? Like, why am I so against it? And I think if you look at what vulnerability means, if we look at sort of one of the textbook definitions that a lot of us understand, it's like, vulnerability refers to weakness. And weakness means we can be taken advantage of, we can be injured or hurt, or it leaves an opportunity for someone to take advantage or hurt us. And so there's some fear there, right? A concern of our own internal or personal safety. And what I want to invite people to do is try to reframe the understanding of that term to mean something more than just that. All right. Because vulnerability, especially the way that it's sort of described through thought leaders like Brene Brown and Anthony Robbins, and I mean, there's a lot of personal and professional development coaches and leaders out there that speak to this. But this idea of being able to open up and share what's really going on, that's really what I'm trying to refer to here. This idea of what's alive and real. Like if there's something that's keeping us up at night, how many nights do we have to keep enduring that sleepless night, that overwhelming stress, that anxiety, maybe even depression or second guessing of ourselves on our own? I mean, eventually there comes a point, I would hope, that we want to do something about it. We want to make changes. And if we can't do those on our own, how else are we going to do it? We have to be prepared to extend a hand and ask for some help. That in itself is an act of vulnerability. And it can be done in a safe and in a controlled way, especially if we're just dipping our toes into the water of vulnerability for the first time. I know it can be very scary and intimidating because we have some fear around that. And so I always like to invite people, especially men, just start someplace, start doing something that's really small just to test this idea. And if you're really unsure of how to do it on your own, that's where I recommend finding a men's group, finding a community of people where you can get around them and see vulnerability in action from a healthy, positive place. But also, in turn, if given the opportunity and you feel like you want to try, you too, in turn, can maybe try opening up about some of the things that you're currently working through. And that's just a wonderful place to begin, because you have to develop trust in the act, right, of being vulnerable. Trust that it's okay. You're going to be okay. And, and I wish I could give you a much more succinct and a simpler way to do this, but I find it's actually through the activity itself that we gain the experience, but also the trust with the act itself, because we can talk about it. We can theorize about this. I could talk all day long about all these different ideas, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to us doing it, actually being a little bit more vulnerable. And I know even with my kids, I struggled with this. I have 2 daughters. Opening up to them, especially about some really sensitive things or some of those triggering emotional things, that I myself have had to work through, especially with them starting to date, starting to date other men and like just that stress. And some of my mind gets busy thinking about things and I just want to protect them. And opening up about why I feel a certain way around them dating, was very cathartic for me, just in letting them understand this is why I get this way when you start to date a new boy. I was a teenage boy at once, and I remember how I used to think and what I used to do. And I like to think that things have changed in the last 30 years and but not changed that much. So I'm here to protect you, but unless I open up and share that, rather than just telling them, no, you can't go out on that date, or no, I don't feel comfortable going to do this, it gives me the why to share with them. Not just the simple thing, I'm your dad and that's final. Like that doesn't mean anything. I remember my parents doing that to me. When meanwhile, if I just opened up with them, which I have, about my emotions and how I'm feeling about them doing certain things, expressing some of my fears and my concerns, it creates a place where we can now form some understanding as well as some agreements. But it started with me sharing with how I was feeling, and being a bit vulnerable. So yeah. Is it awesome? It can be. Is it scary? Sure it is. But is it worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Hands down, it's worth it. And you're worth it. So if this is a skill that you're looking to develop, as I said, find a community to start practicing, start doing some research, maybe some due diligence, listening or reading to some other great resources on this topic. And it's a wonderful place to begin, and it's quite safe because you're also controlling the pace at which you go. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. But if you're feeling like there's something missing, this might be that piece that opens up or unlocks that door that allows you into that next place where life just really blows up for you. And what I mean by that is you open up the world to start giving you other opportunities and experiences because you're now open to it. Anyways, yeah, that was a few thoughts on that, Marcus.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Sir, you are incredible. You have spilled so many nuggets this episode. Sir, you got any final tricks in the bag? Any final words for that young boy, that young girl, that young man in audience whose back is against the wall? He's fearful. He doesn't know what to do. Any final advice for him?
As I mentioned before, we're all resilient. Whether you know it or not, you are. And if we realize how resilient we are, like really own that fact that we have this special characteristic that's in our DNA, it reminds us that we can overcome and we can endure the hard stuff. The hard stuff in life, because life does give us a lot of hard stuff. It does. It's challenging. Look at the last 2 years. If it hasn't taught us how challenging things really can be, I don't know what else will. But yet, we're still resilient and we can work our way through it. We can develop, we can learn new skills, we can learn new ways of dealing with those hard things. And realize that we have that in all of us. And so anyone that's feeling like, geez, I just don't know how to do it. I like what you're saying, but I'm just not sure if I'm the right fit or if that's possible for me. I'm here to say it is possible. And to be honest, anything's possible. But it does take a decision followed by an action. So if there's areas that you want to change, it's okay. Acknowledge that. Maybe share it with a couple people. Just say, these are a couple areas I'd like to start changing. And then look for one action, just one action, not 100, okay? Not 20 things, not 3 things, one thing to start moving you towards that direction. It's like people that come to me, it's like, well, I really want to start losing some weight. I'm like, great. I'd like you to start walking every day. Walking? What do you mean walking? Oh, I just want you to get outside for 30 minutes a day. That's it. I want you to get outside and walk for 30 minutes a day. And if you can do that consistently for the next 2 weeks, message me after, tell me that you did it, and I'll give you the next step. But it's all about creating consistency as well as trust in ourselves to follow through on the things that we've said are important to ourselves. At the end of life, that's all that matters. We have to be people that follow through on our commitments, not only to others, but also to ourselves, because that's about being integral. And when we're acting from a place of integrity, man, we feel good about ourselves. We feel motivated. We show up differently. And honestly, we have a lot more fun. So those are a couple little snippets. Pick one action that's going in the direction of where you want to start seeing some changes. And that's the best place to start.
Sir, how can we connect with you? How can we learn more? And you are on a movement, sir. The train has left the station. How can we connect?
Well, super easy to find me. If you can spell my name, you'll find me. And I'm on most social media networks just with my name, Dai Manuel. And also my website, daimanuel.com, which thank you for putting that up there, Marcus. That's great. There's a new site launching in a couple weeks. So, I forgive me if the navigation's a little cumbersome right now, but it will get better. But there's lots of content and articles there to help get this started. I talked about just taking one action. Well, if one action was just to go read a couple of the 1,500 articles I've got on my website, it's a great place to begin. And there's lots of free resources. And I always say, I'm someone that loves to have conversations just like Marcus does. Just shoot us a message, shoot me a message. Say, hey, I loved what you and Marcus were talking about. Here's a men's group that I joined, or here's how I practice vulnerability. That's great. Let's have a conversation. And that's where we can start.
Love it. Love it. There you have it, y'all. Connect. I told you guys. I told you. The man of men. This man is incredible. So many nuggets. The beauty of this show is I get to dive in and watch it and rewatch it and relearn and educate myself. Sir, I thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to give back in this way. This has been phenomenal, sir. I want to say this to you publicly. Don't ever quit. We need you. We need what you're doing.
Thank you, Marcus. And just in closing, I just want to say thank you for putting together your platform, for leading the charge. But more importantly, it's like you're shining a big spotlight in some of these dark areas of our lives that we all know are there. It's sort of like that crawl space under the house, right? It's like we know it's there. I think our old ski gear is there, maybe the old, some of the old clothes, summer clothes. But we know there's a recess there, and it's dark, and it's dingy, and there's stuff to get cleaned out. And yet we just sort of ignore it. Yet you're here shining a spotlight on the area, but also providing us with resources, tools, and examples of how we can start to clear it out and enlighten it. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And I really just absolutely love everything that you're doing. So I don't think that this is a goodbye, but rather ta-ta for now, as Tigger would say. And I know we'll be talking again soon because we just have much more to speak about.
For sure. Love it. Thank you all, my audience, for tuning in to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. I hope this message was inspiration. I hope this was powerful. I hope this was helpful. Help you take it to the next level. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing it with some of your male friends. That's huge. That's the goal. That's what we're trying. We're trying to uplift. We're trying to uplift our men and women and take them to the next level. We gotta go. We gotta let Mr. Manuel go. He has a company to run, family to love on, and some daughters to beat some boyfriends up. We love you guys. Take care. Like I always end every show, take care of your friends, take care of your family, and always take care of business. This is Marcus Norman, your favorite gentleman, and Dai Manuel signing off. Love you guys. Bye.